So I thought what I'd do in this video is do the actual sending of a message, at least on the client side, to simulate what it would do when you actually send a message. So right now, we've now got these chat messages loading. But what if you receive a new message or you send one, like you type and you send. Right now we just have a pop-up, so why not actually add the message to this view? So that's what we're going to do in this video, is get this adding in there. One small thing I did notice though with about to do this video is this dialog pops up in the center of the screen. So if your views say over here, it kind of looks funny when it's it's not centered. So let's first center this this chat message, this basically the pop-up dialog. Instead of being center of the screen, be center of the owner. So that's a nice quick change to make. So just open the base dialog user control, go to the show method, and then before we show it, basically state show in the center of the parent. So mDialog window dot window start location equals owner, and that should fix that little annoyance. Let's just double check. Or not. So that doesn't have an owner, so that will be the other issue. So mDialog dot owner equals, and then do we have access to the main window anywhere? So I think we can just do application dot current dot main window. And now it should show in the center of that window, hopefully. There we go. So now wherever the the user's attention is, regardless of the center of the screen, when they click, they get this nice centered dialog. So that's that out of the way. So first thing we want to do then is change when we type in here and press send, we actually send a message. For that, we'll go into the chat list view model, and I thought it was chat message list view list model view model. That's the one. Then in the send command here, now instead of doing this, we want to get rid of this, and we basically want to send an actual message. So items.add new message. Fake send a new message. So again, once we do the server code, this will actually send the request off to the server, and then once it's verified that it's sent, it'll change from like a a loading state, if we will, a sending state, into an actual sent message. But for now, this is good enough to link up all the UI. So we want first we want initials. We'll just make a message up here. Message equals. Now, I don't think we even added an actual message here. We didn't. So let's add public string pending message text. The message text for the current being written, or the text for the current message being written. So in that case, we mustn't have anything bound in the chat page. So box, no we don't. So in that case now, text will be binding to the pending message text with the update source being set to property change so that it updates whenever you're typing. We also have, actually I think that'll be it for now. So message is pending message text. Message sent time is, and again this will be updated once we have the real server to be the actual time it was really sent, but for now we'll just put the current time. Profile picture RGB actually doesn't matter because we're sending the message. So send by me equals true. Send the name. And that'll do. Now, let's see first if that works. So click send. No reference exception. Okay, so items is null in this case because we haven't loaded any items. So we can create again for now. We'll just say if items equals null, items equals new list. And we'll start to think about thread safety in another video. So if you click send twice, or regardless of that, if multiple places are trying to, add items, we really want to lock this list. But we'll do that in a completely separate video. So this is not technically thread safe, but good enough for this video. Okay, so we're adding, I'm guessing, but we're not seeing. So the items are in there. Oh, and I know why. So you can see this list is not updating yet when we do, we set the view model itself, the update. So with view models, so far we've done the body weaver and the property changed, so that when, a property changes, like items, when the whole items change, or when this changes or this changes, effectively body weaver in the background fires this property changed event for us. So it calls the onProperty change the name of the property. And that's how the current view model binding works. And that's pretty much all there is to binding, as I mentioned before, this notify property changed. Now that isn't strictly true because there's one other real instance of view models, and that's for collections. And collections have, I believe, collection changed event, or something along those lines it's called. So what we want to do is change this list, because when the items inside the list change, view models have a specific way of monitoring that, and that's through this collection changed event. So we want to change a list to an observable list, which is in observable collection. And that is in the system collections object model. And if we go into this, you'll see this iNotify collection change. That's the one I was thinking of. So this is the other interface. There's your standard when the whole thing changes. But when just items inside of a collection change and you want to update a list, this is the interface that gets implemented. And then all it does is raise this collection changed instead of this property changed. And then controls like the, if I can find it, it's in the chat message list control. So things like this items control in WPF automatically listen out for when you bind item source, it first checks if this implements the notify collection changed. And if it does, then it will effectively fire whenever that collection gets changed and update the UI. So all we have to do is change the list to an observable collection for this event to fire. So now we just need to fix everywhere else where we've got the new list, change that to new observable collection. There's a few more places. And there we go. So all I've done there is change the property from a list to an observable collection, then compiled the application with Control-Shift-B and simply found the errors and double clicked on them, and then changed everywhere we've got the list into an observable collection. So now if we send, we should hopefully see one. And there we go. So now we can add messages. So that's a good start. There's quite a few things we need to do here now to make this much nicer experience. So I think the first thing is we want this message to slide up, like, fade and slide up. We don't want it just appearing. The whole application's got nice animations and things slide in and out and load in and out. And then we now have this nasty just dump straight in with no animation. So let's animate this, each new chat message in. So we'll start with making a new animation. So if we go to framework animations, the framework element animations, the fade in and out. We probably want the slide in and out. We have an existing one, I think, called animate slide in from bottom. And that was in, where was I looking and couldn't find? Oh, is this I was in the wrong class. This is in the framework element animation attach properties file. So that's in the attach properties, this one here. That's what I was looking for. And we already have the ones for, animating, sliding in from the left, the bottom, the top, the right. Now, we don't want a property for sliding in and out. We just want it for sliding in. And we also only want it to happen when it's a new item. So we'll simply copy this existing slide in from bottom. And we'll do slide in from bottom. Animate slide in from bottom. Unload, we'll call it. Copy and paste that into there. Animates a framework sliding in from the bottom. Unload. And we will have we basically just don't want it to animate if it's not. Unload if the value is true. So all we do for that is we always animate in essence, but if the value is false, then we don't want to animate in at all. So the first load, which has the effect of bypassing the animation, if it's the first load, that can be passed in as the value this time, because it's the same thing if it's true, then, or rather the not value. So if we don't want to animate in, then we effectively tell it we are first load. We kind of bypass that and reuse that rule. Same again for the animation time. Typically if it's first load, we don't have any animation, otherwise we do. In this case, if the value's true, we want to animate in. If it's false, then we simply skip. So all we've done is now repurpose the value. So if we set this, slide in from bottom to false, it'll act as if it's the first load and it won't animate. So therefore, it'll effectively be blanked out. It just simply won't animate. Otherwise, if you set it to true, it will animate, and it'll animate at this, given time. So that's all we're doing there. We can now place this animate slide in from bottom on load into the, I think it's the chat list, the chat message list control. And we want that in the XAML, and we want it on this each individual item. So we'll paste that in. It's the local value equals, and then to check this works, let's just set it to true first and run, and we should get an animating in from the bottom for all items now, which does work. Yeah, so you can just about see that the animate, they stretch in, but they're also fading, but you can just about tell they all animate up. So now we simply want to limit this to only when new items get added. So let's do a binding. We'll call this new item, and now we need to add this new item. So we first need to, there's one other thing I know I need to do now due to this animation. Somewhere we check on first load where do we check? we check for a visibility somewhere on first load, and we make it so that I think it's framework element animation. I thought it was in this one, and it's in the base. Slide in and fade. Add fade, begin, visibility. Where is it? There we go. It's in the, keep going to the wrong file. It's in the framework element animation attached properties again. In the base attached property, well, the animation base property. And then on the first load, so this is handling, when the UI is first created. If it starts off hidden, or in this case, if it starts off hidden, then we'd make it hidden. The way we've now done the animation is we want certain properties like this one to be hidden anyway and then animate in, because this is not necessarily going to be first load. Or actually, we can fix this without changing that. So, oh no, we can't because that's the value. So when the value changes to true on first load, which is us animating up, fading in, it's not going to be hidden. So that's the issue, that we want to effectively immediately on add animate this new message in, but it needs to start off hidden, even though the animation is technically true because we've repurposed the animation. So we basically just need to remove this check and start off hidden before we decide to animate. And that's just disregarding any check. And I don't think that'll cause any other issues. We'll double check with the animations, but I know we need to always hide, otherwise we'll get a bit of a glitchy looking UI. So that's that bit. We were doing the new item. Okay, so now in the chat message list item view model, we will now need a new property, boolean, called new item. A flag indicating if this item was added since the first main list of items was created. Used as a flag for animating in. So by default this will be false, which is fine. Then in our view model where we send the message, which is in the chat message list view model here, we now simply flag the new item here. So now that animation should only happen when we add new items, because we've told the animation to only run based on that binding. So now if we load these, you can see the fade in now as normal. And then if we type a new message, it animates in. So there's that. I can add loads of messages. So that seems to be working okay. And if you scroll, then it doesn't re-scroll, which is fine. We don't want to be intrusive. Oh, that's... Okay, so once you've scrolled, it looks like, once you've come out and then scrolled once, the message isn't scrolling to the bottom. So it kind of, it starts there and then fails. So we're going to have to fix that. Yeah. Right, I think then what we'll do, this is obviously scrolling, so it's the scroll viewer. What's that complaining about? I think that just needs closing and rebuilding again. I'll ignore that for the minute. So the chat message list control houses a scroll viewer, and that's the thing scrolling. So I think we need another attached property similar to this. So we've got scroll to bottom on load, which is fine. So we've got scroll to bottom on load. Let's rename this class to scroll viewer attached properties, because now we're going to have more than one. We got that open, close that. Copy this one because it's going to be very similar. Paste again, and we'll call this one auto scroll to bottom property. And this will automatically keep the scroll at the bottom of the screen when we are already close to the bottom. Then on value changed, here's designer fine, scroll view fine. Data context now is going to be scroll changed instead. And this can be control scroll changed. This will now be a scroll changed event args. And I should be happy with that if we rename the function as well. So now we're hooking into when the scroll changes. This time we want to I guess, well, we don't need to check if it's a scroll viewer because we've done it there. So var scroll equals send it as scroll viewer. Now we want to first check if we are close enough to the bottom. So that will be if scroll dot the scrollable height, so the maximum available scroll height minus the current position, which is vertical offset, I think it is. So if the difference between the very bottom and where we currently are is, say, less than 20, so if we're practically at the bottom of the scroll already, then in that case we want to scroll to end. And I think the difference between scroll to end and scroll to bottom is that scroll to end returns, I think, straight away compared to scroll to bottom, which I think might hang. I'm not sure of the two differences. But let's try scroll to end. If that doesn't work, we'll do scroll to bottom. So now all we should have to do is attach this property to here as well. And now every time we're close enough to the bottom and the scroll position changes, it will stay at the bottom. So it shouldn't affect our normal scroll, which is fine. It doesn't affect our... Well, it affects the dragging in the sense that now you can see here, watch the bottom of the scroll bar. I'm clicking now, and then as I drag up, it doesn't scroll until I break past that difference of 20. So now I can scroll, up. So that variance of how close you are to the bottom before it moves is your value of 20. So we can adjust that to whatever value we like. So we could change that to, say, 10. And it just means then if the user's only very marginally off the bottom, then, they're going to miss that. So we go to there and now drag. You can see it starts at 10, which is that much. So they're going to be right near the bottom. So I think 20 is probably a good number. So we can see that that's working because basically it's not allowing us to... it's keeping the scroll bar at the end whenever were close to the end. And then when we now send a message, hopefully, that then fixes that little scroll issue. If we're away from the top and we send, then it won't scroll down because you don't want to pull the user away from where they're looking at the message, but the new message does appear at the bottom. So if I type some numbers, scroll up, send, scroll back down, they are there, but it doesn't jump down. Whereas if we're already at the bottom and we type, then it's it scrolls in, and it's a nice effect. So that's that done. I think in future again, once we're say up the top and a new message comes in, we'll put a little banner here that says unread messages or something. And then as we're scrolling through, we can make sure that as the messages come into visibility of the unread, they get marked as read, that sort of thing. But for now, we won't do that in this video. So let's carry on cleaning up a few more things. So one thing when we send a message, we want to clear the message text because we've now sent the message. So see if I can find where I was again. In chat message list view model, after we've sent the message, clear the pending message text. So that's one, we'll clear that off. So now we type a message, send, and it clears the message. Now the other thing is, once we send, I'd expect that to be focused again. And also when we change page, I want it to be focused. So let's just add some focus into this page. So we go to chat page, and we go to, let me just clear this off. Let me just do the whole deleting of open project folder, delete the bin, the object folder. I'll also delete the VS folder, and then I'll restart Visual Studio. And that should fix this issue. So I'm just going to restart Visual Studio for a moment. Okay, so I've restarted Visual Studio after deleting those folders, and we've got the UI back. So let's carry on where we were. We wanted to, on the send button. So we've got a command send, but this is purely built into this UI. We want, when we click this button, to focus this text box. So first thing we want to do is name this text box, so we can actually reference it in code behind. So name is going to be message text. Then on the send button, we will have on the click event, which I think is okay. Yeah, because basically when you're clicking is when you're losing focus. That's the only real time you want to refocus that box, is if you've clicked that button. So on the click event, we go to the code behind now. Let's rename that to send button clicked, and that was with control and pressing R twice. So hold control, press R twice, and then you can rename the function, and it will also rename the XAML for you. Add a description. When the send button is clicked, maintain focus on the text box. I think we could probably also simply just say something to do with focusable as false. Let's first try that actually. See if that solves the issue. We might not need to do this function, because if it's not focusable, I think that's just focusable in terms of visual, not in terms of keyboard focus though. But let's try it. So if I click in here, come on Visual Studio. It's gonna hang. There we go. Alright, so if I type in here now and click this button. Oh, so there we go, that's actually solved that issue. So all I've had to do there is simply set the send button's visibility, not visibility, the send button focusable to false. So we can get rid of this click event. I was going to simply say on this click event, then do message text dot focus, like that. But obviously, simply preventing the send button from being focusable saves that, requirement anyway. So that's kind of a shorter way of doing it. Now the other thing we want is we want this to be focused when we first load. So we've already got the helper for that. That's the local is focused property, I believe. So now by default, when the page is loaded, I guess, we should have it focused. So there we go, it starts focused, which is what we want. When we change pages, it's in focus, but if we've lost focus, say clicking here, and then we change, really, whenever you're going to a new chat page, regardless of where the focus is, which is now, like I say, lost, you also want to keep it focused then. So to do that, we'll go to the chat pages view model changed, and once we're fading in, make the message box focused. So then we'll do the message text dot focus. So then in all instances, the message box is staying focused, which is the main thing we want. So now we do that, we've got focus, we click away, lose focus from there, but we then change, we're back to being able to type straight away. The one decision I made initially was, as you're typing, we do this, and then you click send. I kind of want to do the opposite now. I want to, if I'm typing away, I expect to press enter and send the message. If I want to then actually have an enter, in most applications, you typically hold the control key and press enter to get your actual enter. That seems to be the default behavior. So we're going to flip this around and do that. So by default, we want to enter to send the message, but if we do want a new line, we want to hold control and press enter. So let's do that. We'll do this with, I guess we could do it with an attached property, maybe. Yeah, let's do it with an attached property. So if we go to attached properties, text attached properties is focused, focus property, focus and select, and we want now, this one will be, what shall we call this? Control enter new line property, because by default what we're going to do is we're going to remove this accepts return, so it doesn't accept return by default, and then we're going to inject the enter if we've got control held. We simulate the accept return, but then by default pressing enter will actually cause the in fact pressing enter will do nothing on the text box, so we'll also then fire, there's a point, when we press enter we then want to fire a command. So how could we pass that command into an attached property? We can't. Okay, no, let's not do an attached property in this case, because we want a little bit more customization in what we're doing. So we will just have, in that case then instead, we'll do a preview key down. Preview key down. New event for this. So every time we're about to press a key, but before it gets actually injected, if you will, we want to do something. So we've removed the accept return, so no longer can you press enter to add a new line. So if we quickly show you that. Now when we press enter, we don't get a new line, but you can still send the message. So that's half of the job. We now want that to do that, but on enter we want to send the message. So let's go to the code behind and preview the input into the message box and respond as required. So in this message box, we first want to get the text box itself. So that will be the sender as a text box. Then we want to check if the key that's pressed is enter. So if the events.key equals key.enter, then we want to say that we've handled it so that the text box doesn't do anything else with it. Then we want to say the view model dot send. So we want to send the message. So now we should have the send message whenever we press enter in the text box, which we do. It's then clear the text and we can type a new message. So that's a lot more standard in how we expect. We might not need to do this enter send though if we have, this probably just wants to be is default. So is default to true, then let's just remove this send, or in fact, comment this whole thing out for a moment. And let's see if that has the same effect where we don't need to manually send and we simply have a, a working enter, but at least you've seen how we would do it manually. So yeah, so now that send being the default action sends anyway. So the one thing left to do is if we hold control key and press enter, we then want to add a new line to this text box. So in this case, we've got if the key is enter, and now we need to check if the control key is pressed, which is the left or right control, we don't mind. So for that, we do keyboard.modifiers, and modifiers are your, your control, your alt, your shift keys. I think there's one other. And then that is simply an enum. So if we go to that, it's modifier keys, which is an enum. And then you've got, alt, control, shift, and the Windows key, obviously. So I've just done a video on enums if you want to know about flags and what we're doing here. But effectively, we just want to check if the modifier key control is pressed. So for that, we can do has flag. And that will be key dot, no, not key, modifier key dot control. So this will now check if we've got enter. If we press enter at the same time as having control pressed, now we want to add the new line. So we don't need to send the message, but now we want to add a new line at the point where the cursor is. So to do that, we first need to get the index, which is textbox.correctIndex. Then we want to insert the new line. So that will be textbox.text equals textbox.text.insert. We want to start at the current correct position, so we insert the value where we are, and environment new line. And then finally, once we've inserted the new line, we want to make sure the correct, this thing here flashing now, that's the correct. So when we first did index, it's basically saying if this was the text box now and it's got these 3 items in, the correct index would be 3. Well, it'd be 2 because it'd be 0. 0's here, 1's here, 2's here. Oh yeah, sorry, 3 would be here. So it would be at position 3. Then we're going to insert a new line after that 3, so effectively like that. But now this correct position is 4. So we then want to make sure, or rather it might not be 4, it depends how long the string is for new line. And a new line is typically, return, carriage, and new line. So it could be 2 characters. So what we want to do is now shift the correct forward to the new line. So we do textbox.correctIndex, and you can just do, you can't do plus equals, you've got to make sure we stay, because it might have changed with inserting that. So we want to base it off the original index. So it's index plus, and then the environment.newline.length. So however many positions forward that was. So if we now run this, holding control and pressing enter should now effectively just insert a new line wherever we are. So we send the message normally. Now if I hold control and press enter, we get the new line. So if I go to say middle and hold control and enter, it keeps, it does what we're expected to do, which is insert and enter at where we are and kind of keep the this caret at the right position. So now we can send a message nice and quick, or we can type a new line by holding Control and pressing Enter. And there we have it. So now we have a much nicer way to send messages nice and fast. The animate in nicely, so you can go to an existing one, and animate a message in. And I'm sure we can just simply copy and paste text as well. Now notice the only downside here actually with accepts return being false, when we copy and paste new lines, it gets removed. So let's just fix that then. So in that case, we want to, and this is where we might have to do what we did originally. So if I do accepts return here, we'll now get the new line by default, and also the send button won't capture that enter. So we're going to have to flip this logic a little bit now. So now if we do this and enter, we just get a new line. So that's kind of killed that. So let's go back to our code. So then in this case, if we have enter key being pressed and we get into here, then we simply want to say if check we have enter pressed, if we have Control pressed, then we do what we originally did, which is to insert the new line, which might work without it, but I don't think it will, because holding Control prevents an enter being pressed anyway. So we'll leave that in. Otherwise, they have simply pressed enter, so we want to do what we did before, which was simply to call the view model send, effectively have the same job as the send button. And then finally, either way, we want to make sure it's been handled, because we're now manually handling the message. Mark the key as handled. So we're effectively completely replacing the enter key function, but allowing us to now, by default, I guess, paste multi-line text in. So let's see if this now works. So if we type away, enter now sends, we hold Control, we get the new line. That still works. And if we paste, oh, we still don't get a new line. Oh, that's because that's not a new line. Copy that, paste, there we go. So now we can paste in new lines. So that seems to be working nicely. So I think that's it for this video. I think we've covered quite a bit there. We've now got the ability to, click into a message and, send a message, paste text in, do new lines, and it's nice and quick. It's, it's fast, and we've kept the animation. So hopefully this video was, again, enjoyable, and we've done something quite nice there. Any comments, feedback, just let me know. And again, hope it was useful.